The best way to predict the future is to invent it. Stephen Ambrose brings you up to speed on what the future holds as he explores the latest technology as it impacts our lives.
Well, good morning and welcome to Tech Talk right here on High FM, where we try to I certainly do, make technology simple, useful, and exciting. I'm super excited by technology. Hopefully I can get you a little bit more excited and inform you how best to work with all the new toys, gizmos, platforms, and whatnot that just never seem to stop. So today we're going to take a practical look, or a good look, at a practical new phone, to be honest. And this is a nostalgia thing. It has a keyboard. It looks a lot like that good old BlackBerry. And it's called the Titan II from Unihertz. We'll talk about that in a minute. And some other major new developments. We're going to talk in depth about AI, of course. But here's some practical things. Telkom and Huawei, not my favorite company, but certainly they're very active in the South African and African context. And they've got some really interesting ways that they could upskill and open doors for young people and anybody for that matter, small businesses in South Africa and the greater African continent, because AI is a fundamental shift and it's going to take some shifting to make it really work for all of us. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can always learn something and find out something from this crazy show. So moving on immediately to the gadget of the week, and that is the Unihertz Titan II Elite and the Titan II Elite Pro. Everything's now an Elite or a Pro. It's not just a model. I actually wonder why or how this sort of crazy Pro and Elite and Plus and that sort of nomenclature came into being. Really is so much easier just to say I bought the new whatever iPhone 18, not the Super Plus Pro Fold Deluxe Extra Special 1 Plus 17. But be that as it may, these are new phones and they absolutely hark back to the days of the BlackBerry. They've got the full BlackBerry style QWERTY keyboard at the bottom. They run pure Android or a version of Android. There seems to be, I've not played with them. I'd love to try one of these fine days. They should be shipping now. The Titan II Elite is shipping more or less now. And the Elite Pro, on their website, it says August, September. Probably it's something to do with getting these phones accredited through the various networks and ICASA and all the various steps you have to take to actually sell a phone. That's quite something that a lot of people don't realize. You can't just import a phone and use it. And in fact, many people who import phones from overseas that are not accredited or authenticated by the South African standards are actually technically not legal to operate on the networks in South Africa. They will work and they generally do fine, but there's reasons for this, and it actually makes a lot of sense when you understand what it is they manage, how they handle, how the networks do tests to ensure that but basically the radio doesn't hog the network, doesn't create congestion, does not in many ways behave in ways that it shouldn't on a network that's optimized for certain standards. Now, good news is South Africa generally follows all the global latest standards. They update their software on the back end of the network. So, we're on this generation of 5G, this generation of 4G. The latest releases have been implemented. So our networks certainly do stay up there with the best around the world. And the phones need to sort of stay with those standards. And sometimes they don't. And sometimes the backward compatibility is not great. And then they don't work. But anyway, moving back to the Unihertz phones. So really, these are the closest things that I've seen to a modern BlackBerry style device. That full QWERTY keyboard looks super comfortable. It's got a super rugged build. They sort of tout it as rugged phones, not just a standard phone. So they can take dust, they can take water, they can certainly be bashed around quite a bit. And a lot of people, and again, I'm not sure if this is just a nostalgia thing or a reality. There's no question having a tactile physical keyboard that you can use your two thumbs on really makes a difference for long emails and things. Touch screens tend to be a little movable and maybe not ideal, but we're now moving into an era where voice command has reached even on mid-range phones. has reached a level where it's absolutely possible to dictate everything to your phone almost seamlessly without any errors or minimal errors, and minimal trying to coach a 6-year-old to take dictation vibe you used to get from speaking to a phone or computer for that matter. So we're moving into a paradigm shift of how we interact with our gadgets, and along comes a really cool looking device that brings back 2010 strongly. And all the devices are if you look at their website, which is unihertz.co.za, you'll see the leather holsters and all the bits and pieces looks basically like BlackBerry clone, but using proper Android on top. So you get all the apps, everything works exactly as it should. So I know some professional users, a lot of older people, and there are people out there who miss a proper keyboard. This might be a great a device for you. However, they are 5G phones. They do look like they've got a reasonable touchscreen Android interface on top, but they're smaller because you've got half the phone being a keyboard. And they are mid-range processors. Most of them have got sufficient memory to run most programs well, certainly not a gaming powerhouse. The cameras, again, look high 50 megapixel, high quality, but not in the level of high-end phones. So this is a firmly based mid-range phone selling between 10 and 11,000 Rand, depending where. I don't know if any networks have got them yet on deals, but I'm sure that will come. So if you're looking for a keyboard, you really absolutely must have a keyboard. This is a niche that refuses to die. It's definitely something that has great sort of legacy value. And it probably makes a lot of sense for certain people who got used to their BlackBerries and have moaned or bemoaned the day that, certainly for my father, the day that I had to move him across to Android and all the craziness that goes on in the Android and even in the iOS ecosystem. It just takes a different mindset to use a fully touchscreen enabled phone as opposed to a standard keyboard that you've been used to all your life. So check them out. It's Unihertz, the Titan 2 Pro and the Titan 2 Pro Elite or Elite Pro, whichever way you want to say it. But they have full keyboards, run standard Android, so you can run absolutely every app that you want. They're available at, I think, a fairly attractive price, around about 11,000, just under. And there are a couple of others with different pricing in that sort of range with the keyboards. There's a rugged one, a super rugged one. All of them have got all the necessary to keep you going. So generally a very solid looking, I'm going to try them and I'll let you know, a very solid looking, decent quality smartphone with a full-on QWERTY keyboard to keep you ticking away, drive people mad while the keys click and you're sitting next to them at work. Can be interesting, this. But a cool new gadget, something that I think brings something back. Let's hope it really performs the way it should. So that is the Unihertz Titan 2 Elite. And before we break for our sponsors, I've got one quick live read today, and that is Thursdays and Fridays means fresh magic at the family bakehouse. Golden colours, babkas, biscuits and cakes baked in small batches with absolutely no shortcuts. This is perfect for Shabbat or the whole weekend. In fact, you can keep them throughout the week. Find the family bakehouse at Genesis, Aurochs and selected distributions in the area. On that note, we're going to have a quick break for our sponsors, and then I'm going to come back with a pretty deep dive into AI, reframing how it works, and what is going on in South Africa right now, which I think is pretty cool around how we're going to enable the next generation and the current generation of young and even older working people to take the most out of the new AI revolution that is essentially rewriting the rules across everything in the world. It's quite a big deal. So we'll be back after this.
This is Tech Talk with Stephen Ambrose on 101.9 High FM.
Well, welcome back. And in our Tech Talk Cafe segment, where we do deep dives into topics and trends and technology that really impacts all of our lives and everything that we do. Today, we're talking about Telkom, which is an interesting company to begin and end with, because they are the big daddy, the incumbent, the people that everybody loved to hate. And these days, they've become a fairly benign provider of business and personal telecommunications stuff. But in fact, Telkom is way, way deeper than that. They've got subsidiaries that do all sorts of technology integration. They run platforms and systems and install them for big companies. And it's all based on one fundamental thing that has completely and utterly transformed the world. We take it for granted today. You don't leave the home without your mobile phone. You don't, for most people, make a trip even around the corner without checking maps for issues and problems and whatever it is. So automatically over the last 20 years, every person I know and most people in the modern world across every continent has simply turned to their phone as their primary computing device. It's the source of all information. It is the window to every single platform, be it shopping, be it banking, be it healthcare. It doesn't matter what you do in your personal or business life, your phone connects, interacts, and allows you to access data and stuff, no matter where you are or what you're doing. You travel overseas, roaming is taken for granted. Yes, the mechanics of it has changed. You put in eSIMs, you find new ways to reduce the cost, but seamlessly, you switch your phone off, get on a plane, switch it on when you land. It connects everything that you used to start streaming through, phone calls, voice messages, WhatsApps, you name it. It all just works, and it's working at a level that you really, honestly don't have to give it any thought. And in many ways, it extended and connected what we had done in the greater industrial revolution. You know, we all worked, we all had jobs, we all did stuff, we built stuff, we made stuff, we offered services, you name it, whatever that it was that we did, telecommunications definitely added another dimension. It made us work quicker, it made us work more efficiently, computers and all the rest. There was a ton of talk around 2000 through to the 2010, 2011 around efficiencies and how computers were putting people out of work and all that sort of stuff. But starting in the late second sort of decade of the century, in the 2017, 2018 range, AI started to creep in. And in the early 2020s, it exploded on the world with an impact that we are still trying to understand right now. And unlike any other technology, it has gone in the space of 2 to 3 years from something you didn't even think about, even though in many ways, many components of the current AI chatbot interaction and platforms were running in everything that we use. Certainly in cybersecurity, AI was absolutely, machine learning as it was called, was fundamental to the volume and the ability of these platforms to do everything. It was running in your browser all the time, making Google much more context sensitive. In the original Google, you only typed in a keyword. Keyword was the king. If you had the right keyword and was embedded 470 zillion times in your website, you went up in Google rankings. Oh, it was an industry, and everybody got stuck into keywords. Then it was key phrases, and suddenly Google started getting context sensitive. So it looked where you were, it understood what you were asking, it started tailoring the results based on a lot of other variables, classic AI behavior, but it wasn't called AI. And today AI has come into the world at a level and at a scale and at a speed, to be blunt, that has taken absolutely everyone off guard. And the context that I'd like to mention here, and everyone talks about the technology and everyone talks about the pros and the cons and yada this and whatnot there and how this all works. But what we have to understand regarding AI is that this is not entirely simply a new tool. It is definitely a tool. It's definitely something you can use to do pretty much anything. But it's the fact that you now have intelligent thinking tools. It's not just a hammer you pick up and hit a nail. You tell the hammer what you want, it picks itself up and carries on hitting the correct nails. So it's a very different way of looking at how this whole thing works. So you put that type of product into any business, into any process, into any company, into anything that you do, and the potential to rework absolutely everything is utterly immense. The challenge that we all have is that it's new. We've been doing something for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, doesn't matter. We've been doing things. We get up in the morning, we go to work, we do certain things. We get up in the morning, we run the home, we do certain things. Everyone has their pattern, their style, their whatever that they do. And certainly when you go to school, you get taught how to do the things that have been part of the whole rubric of how education works. You learned your numbers, you learned your letters, you learned history, you learned geography, you learned science, you learn all this stuff. And that all culminates in you becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a worker, a shop assistant. It doesn't matter what you become in your later years to earn a living, but all of that is based on what has been. Now, AI is coming along and changing all of that. The real potential of AI is that it can take away, and Elon Musk keeps talking about this. He keeps alluding, not even alluding, saying directly that in the near future, without too far, labor as we know it will be extinct, and scarcity as we know it will be extinct, and also work as we know it will be extinct. Now, extinct's a big deal. Extinct means it does not exist anymore in any context whatsoever. It has been reshaped, reframed, and reworked in a way that completely and utterly changes the way that that thing happens. And that is where all of this is going. So how this relates to Telkom's 100 million, Rand AI Institute is that there was always something called the digital divide, those that had access to digital technology and those that didn't. And now we're moving into what you would almost call a skills gap. And if anything, the skills gap is even broader because you can have access to connectivity. You can have access to technology and still not have the skills in using that technology in a way that makes sense, or rather the only way that that technology should be used in order to deliver the benefit that is expected and to deliver the change that is happening regardless. But certainly you as a person, you as a small business, you as a large corporation, you as a government needs to understand what needs to be done. So the goal of this institute is entirely practical. It'll focus on job-ready AI and digital skills training. I think they haven't really mentioned, and all the reading I've done and all the press releases that came with us didn't really mention something more important, is that this has to extend all the way down to nursery school, so that the entire education system through primary, tertiary, and certainly advanced education understands that the days of learning how to do a process system or whatever it is that you do has fundamentally changed. The intelligent machine can do that stuff with access to more data, faster, quicker, easier, and cheaper and at scale than you ever could. So where does that leave you as the human being in the machine? What is it that you need to know? What it is that you need to do in order to still be relevant? And they're talking about things that it could add at a recent Huawei Connect conference. And these conferences are normally excellent in terms of just surfacing the needs, because a company like Huawei and many others around the world are deep in the technology of all of this stuff. And if they don't get it right, because they're the suppliers of the technology and the platforms and the underlying communication technology, if they don't get it right, none of us will get it right, because that's their business. And they reckon that AI could add between 1 trillion and 1.4 trillion to the GDP or to the economy over the next couple of years, certainly by the end of this decade, and support up to 400,000 jobs. What they're not saying is that those jobs actually exist now. People should be employed in some job now. The difference is that job is going to change. So those 400,000 jobs that will be based on AI will be all the jobs that are based on AI. And every single person who has a job or does a job or is working anywhere will have to understand how to use AI, or how AI will change the way that they do their job. Now, AI right now is an absolute wonder at automating anything. So if you have a process, if you have a task, if you have a thing, converting this file to that file, whatever it is, analyzing this or analyzing that, AI can do it quicker, faster, and cheaper than a human being. at scale with more context, because you don't have enough hours in a day in a research project to read every single paper relevant to your research project and every single thing in any language across the world. Because not to say that, Spanish is certainly one of the biggest languages. Chinese is also a huge language. Now, if you're an English speaker, imagine having to look at these things, first translate them, try to find them in the translatable form, get them into English, then read them, then store the data that's relevant. Now you've got a machine that does all of that in minutes, literally minutes, reads through everything, fishes out all this information and presents it to you. Now, what do you do with this stuff? You've just been given the most thorough, best researched piece of paper that you could ever imagine. What do you do with it? How do you work with it? How did you ask the right questions in order to get the right answers? Because the problem with AI and its so-called artificial intelligence is that it's artificial. It's not intelligent. It will go out and based on your instructions, and if you phrase it slightly wrong or you leave out something here or there, it's going to give you an unbelievably coherent set of information that looks maybe on the surface exactly what you were looking for. But is it? Do you know for a fact that that is all accurate? What have you missed and what have you not realized should be in there? Therein lies the skills gap. Therein lies how do you become an expert at something if you don't know it and don't do it, if the machine's doing it for you. So fundamentally, education and training across absolutely every part of how we work, what we do, is going to shift. Now, it's not going to shift today. I mean, in South Africa, unfortunately, and this is replicated across many, many countries around the world, there aren't enough AI and ICT professionals. There's gaps and shortages of 200,000 in South Africa and millions around the world in niche industries. So all of these people need skills and the digital foundation to be taught to them in ways that make sense. So this is what this institute is aiming to do. It's going to offer practical training rather than just purely academic programs. It should help people move from basic digital literacy. And digital literacy is asking the why, not the how question in many instances. And applying that using AI. They say applying AI skills. These are not AI skills. These are human skills. These are skills that you and I use to do our job, either learned, either trained, or through experience. And all employers, all entrepreneurs need this. What is absolutely scary in many cases that a lot of employers haven't even figured this out for themselves yet. Some other research around South Africa has looked at what happens in the skills gap with employers, as from an HR point of view. How do you rate someone on a task that's being done by a machine? How do you know, or how do you collaborate with your employees around what it is that they are doing? Now, interestingly, Vodacom threw this out to their people and said, guys, here's the frameworks, here's the training, here's everything you need to know about the AI in its current state in our business. So these people, which a lot of us have done, is you use your own personal AI to get certain things done. Great. So now all private company information is being sent to a private AI that's using that information for who knows what. And then back come really cool things that you can use in your work. So they've kept it internal, and they reckon that they've got tens of thousands of applications, processes that have been automated using AI. And the net effect so far has been like 18 million rands worth of cost savings or time efficiency. The other thing that we're finding is that if you use the AI correctly and you get your work done in half the time, does that mean you can take the rest of the time off? Or does that mean that you must do even more and more and more work, which there may not be, or whatever? So the whole framework of how we look at how AI changes what we do hasn't quite kept up on every level, on the HR level, on the technical level, on the skills level. So the reframing of all of this through institutes, through training academies, through universities, through on-the-job training across everything is definitely going to see a massive, massive upskilling. And all companies, MTN, all the big companies and governments, hopefully, are investing in skills so that the use of AI becomes part of the system, and it doesn't just create widening inequality. You've got you don't need AI to dig a hole in the ground. Yet, how that hole is built, where it's dug, and why it's dug could certainly be managed by an AI platform. So instead of digging when the pipe has broken under the ground, somehow the sensors and the technology will say that pipe is starting to leak. Let's dig now and replace that valve now before it blows and we've got water squirting out of the street. Things like that could not be done at low cost before can now be done at incredibly low cost, simply monitoring a few sensors, automatically linking it to the work program, ordering the valve, which is in the ground. The idea of preventative maintenance was always great. The execution was always a little bit flawed. We're now living in an era where that is absolutely not the case. But this is where actual dedicated institutes like Telkom have envisaged is critical. In academia, they can keep moving they don't have to be as practical as a business. Business creates a system. If that system works and they're making profit, don't mess with the system, keep going. But the technology is moving so quickly, the platforms, the processes and everything around it is moving so quickly that if you don't stay on top of it, your business could suddenly become not relevant, or your competitor can do it quicker, cheaper, faster, better. Sound like an advert, but it can be done. So staying on top of this from the fundamental stage of education, from the fundamental stage of every business owner understanding that his business needs to change, his staff need to learn and be educated in what can be done. And that can be done through the platforms you use, through Microsoft Office, even managing your emails, through customer service bots, whatever it is. There are so many ways to scale up. The use of Claude can turn a one-man professional into a team of 30 in 5 minutes. Stuff like this is changing the way we work. It is changing the way we think, and it's ultimately changing the output for everyone. So I'm quite impressed with what Telkom is doing in this space, and hopefully more organized effort in this is going to help ordinary South Africans gain the skills that really will matter in the next decade. So really, you just have to stay curious about a lot of these free and low-cost digital courses as they open up, because all of them are going to bring the ability to move with a time where really, just because you've done it for 100 years or even 10 years or even for 1 year, doesn't mean that that's the best way to do what you do. And it really makes sense to move on in the AI world and to truly educate yourself so that you can move forward into this crazy new utopia that Elon Musk envisages. I think we probably are going to be somewhere in between. Anyway, we will have a quick break for our sponsors, and I'll be back with some news of the day and some interesting stuff around that, and then a really cool little tip of the week. We'll be back after this.
This is Tech Talk with Stephen Ambrose on 101.9 High FM.
Well, welcome back. And after that 20-minute summation of an unbelievably big leap in technology in the world, hopefully I covered a few things. I hope I just left one little thought in everyone's mind is, where and how do we learn more about this stuff? Well, ask your AI that, and you'll be surprised at the number of resources that are available in your particular professional area, or certainly just in general in your life era, of what's possible, how things are changing, and engage, and don't be scared, and just be involved in all of this. And I think the benefits will start piling up, and they're always incremental. Systems don't change overnight. The technology may, but certainly things, the way we do things, doesn't. And we'll just all incrementally move along this path, which truly, I believe, will lead to a far, far more interesting and evolved world. Let's hope. I'm a total tech positivist, and we see this, but there's no question that AI is going to change absolutely everything. Now, talking of AI, and it's hard to ignore that these things run on data centers, And Cape Town, there's a lot of controversy now in Cape Town. Generally, there's a lot of controversy around data centers. One, they use inordinate amounts of power. The other thing that people don't realize, that trillions of these processors all running at high speed, power, as you may well remember, does not go away. You can't kill it. You use it, it turns into heat, it turns into all sorts of other things. And in terms of data centers, the more power you use, the more you need to cool everything that you're powering. And that uses an absolute insane amount of water. And in many countries, certainly in the Gauteng area, where water is a massively scarce resource, it's not particularly well handled in certain of our metros, but that's a story for a completely different program. But the simple fact is that the only way you can get data centers to work and work at scale, certainly in the new AI era where there's far more density of data. So a data center that used to send you Netflix videos and store your files is a fundamentally different data center to one that's hosting AI models and data and storage of petabytes, et cetera. They all use lots of power and lots of water. And therein lies the whole craziness of what's going on in Cape Town. All the green people are going nuts about the water usage, the impact it's going to have, you name it. Just lots of crazy stuff going on around what's what in that space. But the good news is one's an American data center, and South Africa is without question the leading country in terms of infrastructure, data centers, telecommunication networks, fiber backbone in the whole of Africa. Others, Kenya's coming along, but as big as they are, none of them can reach the sort of scale of what South Africa has done. And Cape Town, for lots of good reasons, has become one of the sort of tech hubs in South Africa, or in Africa, never mind in South Africa. And data centers are desperately needed because very fundamentally, Southern Africa is far away from the main data centers around the world. And that is in Europe, China, and even America. And that actually has a very simple thing. You cannot beat the speed of light. So there's like 184 millisecond delay to get information from Cape Town to New York, well, to the West Coast of America and back. So it's not a lot of time, but in the scale of computing, it's almost an aeon of time. It's really not conducive. So what a lot of people do, a lot of the big platforms, is they buffer that information, or they put the intelligence closer to where the network is, where it's used. And in this case, you need data centers right in the country to bring that sort of information locally. So a ton of Google's data is stored in South African data centers in order to make it super quick and super fast. And if you've got a bot that is speaking to you, you can't have almost half a second delay every time you ask it something and it responds. It just feels unnatural and you'll never trust it. It has to be instantaneous, and that has to be on your own network with low latency, etc. So data centers. But Cape Town as a city has given the green light to two large new data centers. Hopefully all the approvals will go through and all the lawsuits, as what happened for Amazon's new headquarters, will get taken care of, and they will grow. The net effect for all of us will be closer access to real data, faster, smoother operation of all the AI platforms that we've grown to love and use. And let's see when they come on stream, hopefully quicker than you imagine. But it's great investment in the industry. It's great investment in South Africa. And it certainly makes a lot of sense for all of us. Another interesting trend, also based in the Western Cape, is MTN and ZTE. Now, ZTE are a smaller version of Huawei. They've been pretty strong in network and telecommunication base stations, etc. And they have created a new AI energy saving system. Here we go again, AIs and everything, but it's smart. And the best part, across the Western Cape, they've lifted the base station energy savings from 2.8%, I don't know where that came from, maybe that was just monitoring temperature or something, to 13.5%, while not changing service quality. And this is pretty big. I mean, 5 times the energy savings. It means 5 times less battery or power usage, which is a massive cost considering there are tens of thousands of these base stations. Also, in the case of power outages, it can extend the current battery or storage facilities by a big chunk. So really smart use of AI, a smart way that it works. I'm not going to some of the technicalities of how they do it, but simply put, this will probably scale out across the whole of South Africa. Huawei interestingly mentioned something very similar for their platforms, and an inordinate amount of the radio access networks and the backend platforms are using Huawei, along with Vodacom using a lot of Nokia systems and MTN using a lot of others. So the efficiencies of using these AI platforms to save money and do all sorts of things is pretty huge. So the last real news item that I could probably spend an entire 20 minutes talking about is there's been a huge amount, I think I mentioned it last week, there's been a huge amount of hype around Amazon Leo satellite systems in South Africa. And we'll come back with that straight after the ad break. But and the tip of the week, which is actually not going to ask you to download anything. So that's pretty cool. So we'll be back. Just been reminded we have to stop for our sponsors right now. We'll be back straight after this.
This is Tech Talk with Stephen Ambrose on 101.9 High FM.
Well, welcome back. And as I was saying a little earlier, Amazon Leo Satellite has been announced as launching commercial satellite internet in South Africa in 2027 through an exclusive distribution partnership with a local internet service provider who has the ICASA license to provide internet services, including satellite internet services. They're going to put it under a brand called Evry, E-V-R-Y, and they're going to launch it sometime. They haven't been extremely clear as to exactly when, but they're going to launch it sometime in 2027. And you can actually pre-register and send in your email address on the Evry by Herotel portal. And that's Alan Knott Craig Jr.'s company. And you will use their Amazon Leo Nano and Pro compact terminals exactly like, or very similar to Elon Musk's Starlink platform. But herein lies the rub. It's super impressive that this has been done. It makes a lot of sense, as Amazon have amazon.co.za. They've got a massive presence in Cape Town for development, because a lot of the Amazon backend services was developed there and still is being worked from there. So there's a deep Amazon connection with South Africa, and it makes it a lot easier for them to partner with a South African company to bring a satellite service, which makes perfect sense. However, it adds a layer of cost because Amazon have to sell wholesale to Herotel. Herotel have to make a markup and sell to you. So it's not the ideal situation compared to the Elon Musk idea, where he has one company globally that sells directly to customers globally. And the problem with that was that the whole BE system is militated against him simply switching on, which it can do. If you take a terminal, put it on the ground right now, you can get very high speed satellite, low Earth orbiting satellites connectivity with Starlink right now in South Africa. I've flown on planes that have Starlink that go between Europe and, well, international trips to South Africa, that the Starlink connection doesn't work above 10,000. It works until you get off the plane. So you connect when you get on, engines off, sitting at the airport. It works perfectly and at high speed. I mean, you can stream Netflix. It's just ridiculous what you can do. You can connect to your office computer and do real work for the first time on a plane. It's like having Wi-Fi in your home from gate to gate, which is pretty insane. The other thing that is Starlink, with its lead, has thousands and thousands and thousands. The last number I saw was 7,200 satellites that cover pretty much the entire globe right now. Leo has 382, and they're trying to do more, but their rocket blew up, so they will do more in the next near future. But even so, to catch up with the sheer scale and size, and Elon Musk is replacing his satellites continuously. So there's new versions of them going up and replacing the old ones who are allowed to burn up in the atmosphere and get destroyed. So the lead that they have is massive. So as much as this whole LEO thing is being hyped, and as much as it's every form of connectivity for South Africans is welcome, because it all brings options and possibilities, and certainly in deep rural areas. South Africa is a big country. 98% has cell phone connection, but 98% does not have high-speed 5G connection, and the costs are high. So satellites certainly could fill a massive, massive gap in the market. But I just think that Amazon Leo will be super smaller in its sort of geographical relevance, and will start out slow in South Africa, though it has one smaller advantage. Well, it's an advantage and disadvantage. Their satellites are at a slightly higher elevation than Starlink, so their footprint is slightly bigger. The problem with that is that their signal will be slightly weaker, and the speeds will, as a result, will be slightly slower. And also the latency, the time for the signal to reach from a ground station to the satellite to your sub little connecting box will be higher. So all in all, probably not big deals for normal stuff, but certainly tough to work out. Anyway, so it's coming. It'll be here sometime next year, and let's see how it all pans out. Now, the tip of the week is very easy. In your phone, you've got a built-in digital well-being and screen time tool, both iOS and Android. Have a look for it, use it, set an amount of time, how many hours you're going to spend on whatever it is, whatever social media, whatever you're doing on your phone, and tell it to warn you and switch that stuff off, or to restrict it for those hours to that hours. Obviously, you own the phone, you can fix it back on. But still, it's a great way that a small change can increase your productivity and certainly digitally detox you. And on that note, I've been told multiple times that it's time to wrap up and to call it quits for this day. I think there's certainly, hopefully, an eye-opening look at where AI is going, what it's going to do, and how it's going to impact us all. Some useful tools to use, and a cool new keyboard phone, which may just tickle your fancy in terms of getting a little retro and having something to push buttons on. On that note, till next week, same place, same time, right here on Chai FM. Tune into Tech Talk with Stephen Ambrose, and we'll keep you informed and up to date. This is Stephen Ambrose for Tech Talk right here on Chai FM.